It's August 12th, 2024. I have the time as 6:32 p.m.
Please be advised that in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the notice of the time, date, and place of this regularly scheduled meeting of the Jersey City Historic Preservation Commission was sent to the Jersey Journal, Jersey City Reporter, and Ellis Spesolito on Thursday, August 8th. Same notice was provided to the city clerk for posting on the bulletin board outside of the clerk's office in City Hall and on the city website. I have proof of this notice in evidence, which we can mark as B1. Okay, we'll move to a roll call attendance. Commissioner Amatuzzo,
Present.
Commissioner Garriga,
Present.
Commissioner Sandkamp,
Here.
Commissioner Sagong,
Here.
Commissioner Gunther,
Here.
Commissioner Blazak,
Here.
Commissioner Cronin is absent, Vice Chair Gucciarda,
Here.
and Chairman Gordon.
Present.
Okay, there are 8 members of the commission in attendance tonight. 5 affirmative votes are needed for a certificate of appropriateness.
Change. It's this at the bottom. Looks like the only.
Stephen, turn off your microphone. Usually I have to tell you to turn it on. All right. Next item is the approval of minutes from July 17th. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns? If not, staff recommends a motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, I have Sandkamp and Blazak. Do a roll call vote for this. Commissioner Garriga,
Aye.
I'm on approval of minutes, number 4. Commissioner Sandkamp? This is for the July 17th minutes.
Aye.
Okay, Commissioner Gunther?
Aye.
Commissioner Sakong?
Aye.
Commissioner Blazak?
Aye.
Commissioner Amatuzzo?
Aye.
Commissioner Cronin is absent. Vice Chair Gucciarda?
Aye.
And Chairman Gordon.
Aye.
Okay, there are 8 votes in favor, none against, no abstentions. The minutes from July 17th are approved. For correspondence, all copies of correspondence and application materials are linked on tonight's agenda. That is on the application number for each item, which is accessible on the data portal. Moving on to announcements, we have a couple of announcements tonight regarding the agenda and order of items on the agenda. The first is that case 9A, 160 Sussex Street, is being carried at the request of the applicant to the September HPC meeting. Both tabled cases, 2419 Kennedy and 2426 Kennedy, are also being carried both to unspecified meeting dates. The demo case 11A 384 Communipaw is also being carried to the September HPC meeting at the request of the applicant. And then the last item is that we are going to be doing the new business cases first. So that would be 9B and 9C first, and then we are going to be doing old business 8A, which is the proposed amendments to the local landmark designation standards. Those are going to be last. Okay? So the 9B and 9C will be first, and then we'll handle 8A. Make sense? Cool. All right. That being said, number 7, open public comment. If there are any members of the public present who would like to speak regarding matters of historic preservation that are not on tonight's agenda, you can approach the public comment mic. Okay, staff sees no members of the public approaching the microphone and recommends a motion to open and close public comment.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that just brings us to new business first. Robert, if you'd
So
like to call the first case.
Yes, I'll call case H24-151. The applicant is Jensen Vazel, RA, on behalf of Lila Ramiana and Jay Sanchez, owners. The address is 268 3rd Street in the Harsimus Cove Historic District. The application is for a certificate of appropriateness for interior renovations, facade rehabilitation, full-height 4-story rear addition, and a proposed roof deck visible from the public right-of-way, and an altered contributing Italianate row house built circa 1880.
It's on there already. Yeah, just you can unplug the whole dongle scenario and just there we go. It'll populate in a second. Okay, and let's go ahead and swear you in.
Jensen Basil, B as in Victor, A-S-I-L. Is business address is 205 12th Street in Hoboken, New Jersey.
Okay, Jensen, can you just tap the microphone on the podium? It's like a little push. It says push, but it's a tap on the thing. A little green light. There we go. And then just staff wants to note for the record, Jensen has previously testified in front of this board before and is qualified as an expert in architecture. Free to go.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jensen Basil. I'm the architect for this project at 268 3rd Street in the Harrismith Cove section of Jersey City. This project is for a 4-story rear addition and an addition over an existing garage at the rear. We'll be converting a 4-family structure to a single-family structure, and the garage structure would be would maintain as a garage at the lower level and an exercise room up above it. We have 1938 photos of both the front of the building and the back of the building, which show that the rear building, the rear garage, was originally 2 stories. And then the principal building fronting 3rd Street is going to remain in its same configuration. The materials will be restored, but the window configuration, the door the fenestration configuration will remain. The cornice detailing will remain, and the railings at the stoop and the front of the building will be restored. So the lot is a 21.88 foot wide lot by 95 feet deep. So it's slightly undersized in the depth. It's on the north side of 3rd Street, and there is a public alleyway that bisects the block to the north. The proposed addition at the rear would only be visible from the public alleyway. So one wouldn't be visible from 3rd Street and wouldn't be visible from Jersey Avenue either. So on the first sheet, HPC 1, you can see the current photo and the 1938 tax photo, as well as the zoning calculations showing that the proposed work is conforming with the district. On these, and the mixture of just to talk about the block diagram, on the block, there are a mixture of 1- and 2-story garages, and there's also there's a mixture of partial and full width additions at the rear of the principal structure as well. On the second sheet, HPC 2, we have the existing and proposed site plans. So the principal building in its configuration would remain, and then the addition would be added on. There'd be no demolition of partial additions or anything like that on the structure. Right now, there's an overgrown concrete paving in the backyard, and sort of the garage has fallen in disrepair, so that all of that would be completely removed and the landscaping, hardscaping would be completely removed and redone. At the front of the building, the existing planter bed would remain, and the configuration of the stairs and paving would the stairs and the fence and railings would all remain the same. So the site plan proposes a 15-foot 4-inch rear addition. That addition is open on many floors, so it's a loggia configuration. So even though the addition, when viewed from above, is the 15 foot 4 inches, it's the actual building it's set back, especially on the ground floor, the 3rd floor, and the 4th floor. So the only time that the building is the full depth is at the parlor level or the 2nd floor. We would have the new bluestone paving, which would be a flamed finish which is the standard paver on QP. And then there's a small amount of fence there that would be done with E-Pay on the side yard. So on HPC, moving on to HPC 3, you can see the view from the aerial view from the north is detail 1, showing the mixture of the rear additions and the garages, and then through that alleyway. So the alleyway bisects that block. Number 2 is the existing rear of the building. So the building had been gutted. The interior of the building has been completely gone. All the finishes have been removed, wiring and everything. So they've boarded it up. Obviously, we would keep the existing structure. We wouldn't be moving floors around. We'd keep the openings in the front, as I mentioned. So there's no substantial change to that. When we do the addition, we'll be keeping the returns of the brick wall of the original principal building up to the jamb line of the windows on either side. The detail 3 shows the side yard, so you can see the building to the west of us is already a 2-story garage, and we'd be going right up against that. And then that's where the fence would be, the wood fence that's on top of the retaining wall. And to the right is a sizable 4-story building, brick building that is an apartment building that would obviously remain. And then from number 6, the final picture on that page is viewed from obliquely from the alleyway, so you can see a little bit of the back through the neighbor's parking area. HPC 4 is demolition of the existing building, so showing what is there now. The stair is all the way in the rear back, but there's no interior partitions. We'd be removing the fireplaces all the way up. In the garage, we would be keeping the facade, the brick, the cornice, and the door fronting the alleyway, and then the back facade that's facing the court would be redone. I'm going to zoom in really quickly just on the 1938. It's actually a pretty decent photo of what was there from that time period, showing the 2 stories. On the HPC 5, the proposed condition, there's the bottom floor garden level is informal living space, so family room, bathroom, a guest bedroom. The parlor, and on the back is the 2-car garage. We'd be adding a stair to the upper floor. The landscaping, hardscaping, there'd be pervious pavers with some synthetic grass in the back. And on the parlor level, moving up, it's the more formal kitchen, living, dining, main parlor living floor with a small Juliet balcony to the back. And then that goes all the way the 15'4" depth of the addition. And then finally, the garage up above it, there's a bathroom and a small kind of exercise room. On the upper floors, primary bedroom on the 3rd floor, on the 2nd floor, and the top floor, the 3rd floor being the kids floor and play area space. In addition, on the top floor, on the roof, there is a proposed roof deck on the principal structure that is set back from the 3rd Street frontage. It's set back so that it's not visible from the public right-of-way from either the 3rd Street or the alleyway. So it's set back from both pieces. I also want to point out, just again, the loggia configuration. So the side walls come out and it's covered on the 4 sides. It's open to the back on the 2nd and 3rd floors. HPC 6 shows the existing configuration of detail number 1 shows the existing front elevation, which again will not change. The door that's there will be restored to the 1938 door. So the door and transom. So there'll be a glass panel with two wood panels underneath it, and the transom up above. And then one other note is that the parlor level windows will be brought down to the floor. And there's some site evidence, which I can show you in another photo, of that being the original case. On the 1938 as well. I think there's site evidence of it. And then 3 is the existing rear elevation. Obviously, that's going to be going. The proposed rear elevation has the loggias at the bottom floor. It's sort of an outdoor enclosed living area. On the upper floors, it's a balcony that's covered on 4 sides, and then there's a cable rail at the back. So where the loggias are, the small portion of the back wall that faces north would be stucco, and then lining the side walls and the back wall would all be shiplap Ipe siding. So there'd be a warm color palette there between the Ipe and the Benjamin Moore calm stucco color. There really isn't a lot of stucco there. It's primarily focused on just the wall thicknesses that are exposed to the back. So there's on HPC 6 you can see the little cladding detail and some of the samples for both the front stucco and the restoration of the front facade to the original brownstone. So that would just be scraped, hand scraped wherever it's loose, patched, and then resurfaced with a brownstone color. On HPC 7, you can see the existing and proposed building sections, including the loggia pieces. At the bottom, the garage, the proposed garage elevation with the original door and small overhang, and then brick on the sides that would be maintained, and then stucco up above. And then the rear wall facing that is exposed to the court would be that 3-part stucco that's the same stucco as the back wall of the principal building, as well as the side. So they'll all communicate, they'll all be the same color. And then HPC 6, there's construction details for the sky door. So there's no bulkhead at the roof. The permeable pavers in the rear yard, the Yankee gutter that's at the back of the building, the cable rail, and the pedestal deck system that would be on the principal roof. HPC 9 is the front window details, the wood windows, as well as the entry door and transom. And HPC 10 is the details for the rear ultimate clad doors, which will be in black. Should mention that the front window color would be Essex green, HC 188, and then is proposed to be. And then HPC 11 is finally the few windows, the casement and the awning windows at the rear of the building, also in Marvin standard black. That should conclude my testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions that commissioners may have.
All right, are there any questions for Jensen? Stephen, yep, thank you.
On the facade, you went through that pretty quickly, and you used the word restore, but I think I understand that you're replacing the doors, you're putting new doors in, but you're using the 1938 photograph as your guide for what to put there. Is that including the surrounds around the door, or?
That is correct. It'd be the frame as well.
Okay.
I'm going to just zoom in, but there's, yes, everything would be restored to the 1938, and you're right. The door that's there, which is a replacement
Right.
after, would be removed.
Right, and you mentioned the color of the windows being Essex green and the door,
The door as well. Yeah, they
Okay.
match. Correct.
and that goes for below the water table as well?
That's correct.
And is there any is there an entrance under the stairs?
There is an entrance under the stairs. There's an existing iron gate there that would remain.
Okay. And all the ironwork up in the front, the staircase ironwork and the front is being scraped and painted?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
As a side benefit, one of the owner, the husband, is a metal worker. So it's
That
part of
helps.
his trade. Yeah.
And speaking of the front facade, have you done any probes or thought about maybe removing the brownstone or the stucco that's on there? I think this row we saw another row building in this row, maybe on the other side of the row, and they did do probes and they showed us that the brick was very damaged, so we let them put new brownstone on there. So I think this is maybe one of two on this row that have stucco. The rest of them have brick. So have you thought about or looked into the state of the brick behind the stucco?
That was actually my application for 282 Third Street. So, yes, we did. We tried it. The brick was in pretty rough condition. What we could see here, that stucco's been on there for a very long time, and we didn't really want to mess with it. I felt that the safer course of action would be to resurface the stucco. They did put quite a bit of thought into this. We looked at it when we did the 282, and there are score lines within that upper piece. So there was quite a bit of detail that was thought of when they did the stucco in here, or the brownstone. So we felt like that was the proper course to maintain the stucco.
And the existing cornice is, you're restoring it, you're leaving it in place and just cleaning it up, yes?
That is correct.
Okay.
And I just realized the photo or the historic evidence for the parlor windows was actually the 1938 shows it pretty clearly, the infill.
Yep.
And I have paint samples and
Are you putting any plantings in the existing bed in the front?
so that would all be replanted. Yes.
Is that, I don't know if I saw that in your drawings.
I didn't. I noted that it was going to remain. I didn't note any of the specific types of plants. But I would, typically on these, I'd like to do a mixture of boxwoods and like hydrangeas and things like that.
And the tree out front looks pretty bad too. Would the applicant consider replacing the tree?
I'm sure they would. Yes.
Okay.
If you want, Jensen, we usually start the samples on that side. If you want to just pass them around.
Thank you.
So Jensen, is the project that you did looking at the block plan HPC 1, would that be number 5, lot 5? And is that I don't remember exactly what we approved there, but is that the size of the addition that we approved as well?
That's correct.
So it's basically the same as what's you're proposing.
That is correct.
So I have one question though, just about the addition on the garage.
Sure.
Because like your zoning chart, shows that there's no variances required or anything. And I know that's a pre-existing condition there, that garage, but you're adding on to it. So that's okay per zoning.
We had got it through the planning department. We had gotten a determination with planning before we started that restoring this would not be a variance.
Okay.
That would not count towards the rear yard.
Required
correct.
minimum. And was the height of the addition in lot 5 also full height?
No, because on lot 5 it was only 1 story.
Okay. And are there any, so I know that on this row, it's really lots 5 to 12. There are definitely all sorts of additions there, but are there other 4-story additions on this row?
There's a 4-story addition that's 276, which is mostly full width on if you can see the aerial. But that's the only other one. 268 is a similar L-shaped 4-story addition, although not as deep as ours. The other ones are 4 stories but partial.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
I just want to add a comment about the depth of the addition that's proposed. I mean, I know we're talking about, Brian was referencing Lot 5, however, it seems that the property at Lot number 8 sort of bisects the block a little bit. So we don't really have that relationship to the other buildings on the block plan except from ours and then 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So I guess my question is, why does the addition need to be so much deeper than what's on lots 9, 10, 11, and 13? Because I feel like it's going considerably beyond the depth of the neighboring properties, and it's going to have an effect given how little donut there is there, like the rear yard space, and then also combining that with the addition on the roof. I think that that's going to have a big impact on the volume that's back there.
Okay. We felt like it was, it's, I don't have the exact depth of 11, 10 and 11. But just from a coverage perspective, it was under coverage, by a decent amount. So we felt it was, there's a deeper front setback. So we felt like the building could handle a slightly smaller addition. Plus, the casting shadows, it's really not casting shadows onto any other building there, except for possibly the back of 13, which wouldn't be alleviated by making that addition any less deep, because on lot 13 the building is up to the property line. So because their building is shifted so farther forward, like they have a similar bulk as we have, they just shifted the building further forward.
Well, I guess I'm reacting less to the bulk and more how it impacts the yard and the volume of what's behind the buildings.
It does make the yard quite small, but I feel like that I don't know that from the block perspective that I don't think it has a huge impact considering how overbuilt that block is already. Put it that way.
I mean, one of the things I was toying with, Janelle, I kind of agree with a lot of your points, and maybe a way to cut down on some of that is, and I think the loggia is an interesting idea, but maybe it's something like at the top floor that is cut back a little bit just at the top floor, and maybe that could be an open deck or roof deck instead of a loggia at that top floor, and that could cut down a little bit on the height of that, because I think the full 4 stories and the addition on the garage it might just be a little too much, and I kind of agree, though it is kind of overbuilt there, but I think maybe something like taking that loggia at the top floor and having it be a roof deck or something could be a good solution.
I feel like that's a very fair point. I mean, you're touching on something that the loggia is set back 7 feet, so the bulk of the building really is back. If you did not have that, then if you did not have the loggia sidewalls, then the impact would be slightly less. Yes. So I think that's a very salient point.
Can we drill down on that? Oh.
Yeah, I do think something like that, some kind of exploration into trying to sort of break down the volume of what's back there, even if a lot of it's not enclosed, it still feels like an enclosed volume.
Okay.
So
I'm having trouble reading that rear elevation. I'm wondering a couple things. You have a different graphic hatch for the fascia of the 3rd floor than you do for the stipple representing the stucco around it. But when I go to HPC 8 and look at I guess I can't find a detail that shows what that fascia is. Can you speak to that? What that material is?
At the top of the building?
No, the slab edge of the 3rd floor slab. You have a sort of an ashlar course hatch.
We toyed with doing brick. It's supposed to be stucco.
Okay.
It was to demonstrate to my client that the smaller units don't work on surfaces like that. I apologize.
Okay.
When I did the hatch, it didn't translate.
And then what is the significance of you have a diagonal hatch within the loggias that kind of make this upside down L?
It's a shadow line, so.
Got it.
So it's
Understood.
a 45, showing the 7 feet, basically at a 40. At a-
Understood. And then do you have a detail that shows what the material of the soffit is in the loggias
I don't, but the plan was to wrap it all in.
with the ipe?
The ipe, yeah.
And that's true for the the garden level, second and third floors.
That is correct.
Just a general comment. In general, I've seen a lot of your applications before, and in general, I find your applications very complete. This particular one, I'm missing a certain level of detail that I guess I'm accustomed to your drawing sets producing. That rear elevation, I'm having trouble believing that stucco comes right up to the stucco of the par level comes right up without some kind of metal or flashing. The front elevation door, there's a kind of general TBD note that says details to be approved by HPO. There's a lot of things that I would typically like to review at this level specifically, rather than remanding it to staff that I wish I had a better sense of, so that I can get a better sense of what the application actually includes.
Okay.
Are there any other questions, comments? Okay. Hearing that, should we move to public comment on this application? Okay. If there are any members of the public present who would like to speak regarding this application, you can approach the public comment mic. All right, staff sees no members of the public present and recommends a motion to open and close public comment.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we can move into staff comments. So normally I skip right to staff comments and recommendations in the staff report, but I'm actually going to first go to project and proposal background, because I neglected project background on here. So the HPC has actually seen a certificate application for this exact property in the past. In 2000, it was submitted in 2019, but the HPC approved a similar sized rear yard addition at this property in early 2020. The only difference was this application has a roof deck, and that does, similar sized rear yard addition. That application did not have a roof deck, and it did not have a garage addition, but the footprint of the addition was the same. It was under a different architect. Of course, that approval has long since expired, but I did neglect to put that in the project background. So going into staff comments, so I am in agreement that this project does feel a little bit bulky, right? That I think a lot of that bulk actually comes less from the rear yard addition and more from the garage addition. But like Jensen said, they did get a zoning determination. They are permitted to do that. And it is restoring the full height of the garage originally. As staff, we don't really have an issue with the proposed window fenestration. It follows what was on the building. It clearly was not there historically, but it really isn't atypical. Of course, there are different variations that would also be fine, but the 3 window openings, we don't see any adverse effect there. In terms of the rear yard addition, again, it's big, right? Most of the addition applications we see are full height, full width additions, right? These are large additions. I do think the loggia is an interesting incorporation into these additions because it's bulky with less bulk, right? It's all open air. I very much appreciate Brian's recommendation to kind of cut off the roof on the top of that addition. I think that cuts down on a lot of the size concerns that are present in this application. But other than that, from the staff perspective, we see additions like this regularly. We approve additions like this regularly. I don't see an adverse effect here. we have in the staff report, we are recommending actually one more note on the garage. This was not brought up, but I do just want to put it on the record. There is no concern of that garage space being an extra unit because they are permitted to have an extra unit. It's not being proposed as one. There's no wet bar to convert or anything like that. But if the applicant wanted to, they are permitted to do so by zoning, and we would likely, that wouldn't even come to the board. That would be a staff level conversion. So just wanted to put on the record, there's no concern of that here. We are recommending approval of the COA with our standard conditions. I did write down an additional condition that the applicant shall examine the condition of the street tree and replace if necessary. Any replacement street tree shall conform with the forestry standards if the commission is inclined to support this application. And Austin, you're concerned about some of the level of detail. We can fix all of that at the time of construction documents if there's a comfort level in approving this, knowing that those details will come after. Are there any questions for staff or for Jensen?
Maggie, did you consider material on the garage second floor, given that they're showing a photograph? I believe it's brick in the photograph. Did you have that conversation with the applicant?
No. Both materials are equally appropriate. If the commission feels more comfortable approving brick because it's present in the 1938 photograph, I would be supportive of that. But I do think there is, obviously it is a reconstruction. They are already making changes. It's a reconstruction of the bulk, not of what was there originally.
Right.
So doing a different material, you can make an argument for both, is what I'm trying to get at.
Understood.
All right. Are there any other questions? I know there was conversation about the size of the addition.
And you noted about the previous approval. Was it also for full 4 stories? Okay.
Full 4 stories,
And
full width.
I think the difference is I think that garage addition does change my perspective on it, which is what I think what I suggested would be appropriate to me. I think to take that top loggia and turn it into a roof deck essentially. So I don't know how other commissioners are feeling on.
Well, the applicant didn't sound like they were opposed. You actually said it was a reasonable idea, and I'm a little bit concerned about the property just to the west being completely closed in. They will probably be most affected by light and air. Would the applicant consider making that top loggia a roof deck?
Yes.
I do want to note for the record that would also mean the rooftop roof deck would shorten.
Correct.
Right, right, because it would need to not be seen from the public right-of-way, right?
Well, not even that. If you look the photo he has up on his proposed section,
Yeah.
the
Oh, yeah, it's
rooftop
it's
roof
over
deck.
the top of it.
Yes.
Yes, understood.
So that would pull back likely to the edge of the building, right?
Correct.
Or, plus or minus a foot or two.
That is correct.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that one of my concerns about the overall envelope volume, even though the top 2 floors are open in the back, is just that there's the sidewall condition, and so it's effectively enclosed. And as far as the neighbors are concerned, and I just think that if it were possible for those two to be pulled back, so that there's a little more breathing room in the yard space. Just because there's so much volume, especially since the garage is sort of out of our hands and that's effectively approved. We're working with a different site condition than what may have been approved in 2020.
I just want to clarify, are we suggesting to the applicant that they pull back the enclosure of the loggia for only the top floor or the
Correct.
top 2 floors?
Top floor.
Top floor only, right?
Yeah.
Or the top 2 floors.
Well, that's what I wanted to clarify.
Yeah, my concern is that 4 stories, all the way back as deep as they're showing it, whether it's enclosed or open to the back, is simply too big. Especially in light of the extension of the garage to a 2-story structure. Right, it just feels too enclosed, too deep, and if there's a way to handle that differently, maybe it's something I could approve. But maybe nobody else agrees with, and that's fine.
No, certainly was sensitive to that. At least if the top one is no longer a enclosed on the sides, you have this step back. The garage is one height, the next floor is the next height, and then it steps back again to the original facade of the building, and that's certainly going to let a lot more air and light and reduce the bulk significantly. I mean, of course, you could take out the sidewalls on the floor below too. That would, I'm not as sensitive to that. I mean, I think if the top floor comes off, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I would not object to keeping the third floor terrace become a roof terrace, but habitable, so that you lose the sides of the loggia and the top only at the top floor, but keep the loggia on the second floor as a loggia. I don't. For me, that would not be problematic. Just a couple additional questions, since just relative to comfort level and detail, I just want to get on the record sort of what the design intent is, so that we have something to refer to. The front door, the transom, it's a wood transom. Is that correct? Not glass.
It's wood frame. There's glass, obviously glass in the center.
Okay, so and that's a clear glass.
Yes, correct. Same as the light in the door.
And is the intent to paint the wood?
The intent is to paint it with it. Yes, correct.
Same color as the
That is
wood
correct.
framing of all the windows, right?
Yeah, the Essex green.
And then is the intent for the transom to be more or less in the same plane as the door?
Yes, it's going to be. Yeah, that's correct. It's going to be right above the door frame. Correct.
Understood. And finally, the existing building right now, the sills and headers of the windows are painted the same color as the field, let's say, of the stucco. Is your intent to keep that relationship the same? In other words, paint both the sills and headers as well as the stucco?
It is. There's on note 2 for the proposed front elevation. There's something on the right that says color to match the main facade.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also a detail of one of the windows enlarged that says no change to the sills, or sills to remain. So just wanted to clarify. I guess it's a question for staff, Maggie. Is your opinion that the color of the sills and window headers should be the same as the stucco?
Yeah.
The
I'm not
1938.
staff, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
What?
I was rendering my opinion when I wasn't asked.
So on the 1938, there's no discernible difference between
Yeah.
the color of the facade and the color of the lintels and sills.
Yeah.
Very clearly, a great deal of care has gone into making this building look like a masonry building, which meant that they would have had all of these things trying to look like masonry. So historically, they likely would have been finished in the same fashion to match, so that they all blend and you see those minimal lines, and you think it's sandstone,
yeah.
brown stone, whatever it is.
Thank you.
So yeah, it is staff's opinion that they all should be the same color.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, are there any other questions for me, for Jensen?
Should we confirm that the applicant's okay with?
Yeah. So it sounds like the commission is inclined to approve the application, provided that the applicant removes the sidewalls and roof of the top floor loggia, and also therefore reducing the size of the roof deck. That appears to be, I'm seeing nodding, so that appears to be what the commission is inclined to approve. Jensen, are you comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay. And then we also have the additional condition that was read into the record regarding the street tree. And Austin, I have noted down your detail items to make sure they're present at construction documents. Are there any other items that the commission would like to see included as a condition of approval.
Maybe a planting plan for the existing planting bed.
Sure. So would you feel comfortable with that clarified at the time of construction documents?
Sure.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Planting plan to be included at CDs. Okay. All right. That being said, staff's recommendation is to approve with conditions read into the record in the staff report and accepted by the applicant.
I'll make a motion to approve with conditions as read.
Second.
Okay. All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Sakong,
Aye.
Commissioner Blazak,
Aye.
Commissioner Amatuzzo,
Aye.
Commissioner Gariga,
Aye.
Commissioner Sandkamp,
Aye.
Commissioner Gunther,
Aye.
Commissioner Cronin is absent, Vice Chair Gucciarda,
Aye.
and Chairman Gordon.
Aye.
All right, there are 8 votes in favor, none against, and no abstentions. The COA with conditions is approved.
Very good. Thank you all.
Thanks, Jensen.
Have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
All right. Can move on to our next case.
So I'll call case H24-146. The applicant is Charles Harrington Esquire on behalf of 299 Fifth Street LLC, owner. This is for 299 Fifth Street in the Harsimus Cove Historic District. The application is for a certificate of appropriateness for interior renovations, facade rehabilitation, and full-height rear addition visible from public right-of-way at a contributing altered transitional Greek Revival row house constructed circa 1860.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tom Lean instead of Charles Harrington this evening on behalf of 299 Fifth Street LLC. As you just read from the description in the agenda, we are seeking a certificate of appropriateness. The description also mentions that it is a full-height rear addition, which is visible from the right-of-way. It is visible from Cole Street through a vacant lot. It's our understanding that there were approvals to have that site developed. I believe those approvals have actually, they're no longer in place. However, I don't know if there's any ability to extend them, but we do anticipate at some point somebody will develop that lot. Other than that, I have Scott Mahaffey here as my architect who will run through his plans and answer any questions of the board.
Okay.
Thank you. It's Scott Mahaffey, M-A-H-A-F-F-E-Y.
Thank you.
Mr. Mahaffey, I believe you have appeared before the board, but would you mind giving them
Sure.
the benefit of your credentials quickly?
Sure. I've been licensed in New York and in New Jersey since 1990. I've been doing projects in Jersey City since 2003. I'm very familiar with Chapter 5. Chapter 345, Section 5, the historic district standards, the zoning standards. Familiar with the Secretary of the Interior standards. All the different subcodes that are applicable here. I have presented to the to HBC for the first time in 2004, I believe, and then most recently in 2018, I think. So I'm probably a new face to some people, to various neighborhood associations, to the zoning board, the planning board, and I think that's about it. Yeah.
And is your license current?
Yes, I'm currently licensed in New Jersey.
I would submit Mr. Mahaffey as a expert.
Okay, staff notes that Mr. Mahaffey has previously been qualified as an expert in front of this board in the field of architecture.
Okay. Yeah, you might have to show me, because there's two identical ones.
I know. One is USB-C and one is whatever the port on the bottom of everyone's iPhone
I
is.
think this is this.
I don't know, but they're changing it to USB-C, so I guess that
The
name
other
doesn't matter.
Okay.
Just waiting for it to pop up. There we go.
With your permission, I have more sheets, but I don't think I need to go through them in the same level of detail as our previous applicant did. And if you want me to go through them with more detail, I will do that. So as Tom said, this is circa 18, or Maggie, or sorry, Commissioner Gordon said this is 1860 circa townhouse. Technically 3 stories because the basement's considered a third level. It's one of 9 running along the south side of this block of 5th Street. There's an identical set of about 11 of these running across the north side. Then there's a set of 6 buildings along Cold Street, 2 of which are missing, as Tom mentioned, which are providing the view from Cold Street to the side of this structure. Let's see if I can make a little more room here. Given some of the conversations you were just having about the size of, well, actually, let me start with the front. So in the front, we're going to remove the brick face off the front of the building, and we're going to replace the aluminum windows with new wood windows. The existing stoop's actually in fairly good shape. We're going to clean it up, paint the railings and stuff like that. The front door is being replaced, but the existing frame is in pretty good shape and has an existing there's an existing transom and frame that we're not going to do anything but make sure is in good shape. And come on, sorry,
There you go.
my fingers don't seem to like the. There we go. All right. Yeah, so we're replacing all these with standard Marvin double-hung ultimate windows. There was a question about the paving. Right now, the entire lot is paved, although interestingly, the garage that's in the back against the alley has a dirt floor, but the rest of it is all concrete. So we are going to remove the concrete from the front of the building and put in a planting area. And while I have had several requests into Mr. Reedon to give me a list of what those kind of plantings would be, I haven't gotten that list yet. So I don't have that on the drawings just yet, but we do expect to have a planting schedule for that front area. And also, we're going to do that in the back where we're removing all the concrete that's between the front building and the rear building. Not sure why this isn't. My fingers. All right, so from a basic site plan standpoint, that's what we just talked about at the front. Wow. My keypad, touchpad does not like my fingers tonight. The front building is, as mentioned, is having is going to get a gut renovation inside. The second piece of it is there's an existing frame structure, a rear yard addition that seems to have been built sometime between 1885, because it's not on the Sanborn map in 1885. There's a small one on the 1906 Sanborn map. But the construction of that addition, the wood sizes and stuff, are clearly from the 1930s, post-1928 dressed lumber sizes. The third part of it, I'll come back to the rear yard addition in a second. And the third part is there's an existing wood structure that also doesn't show up in the 1885 plan but does in the 1906 Sanborn map. So it was built not as a garage, but as a stable, and has an upper level that was actually built as a hayloft. So our plan for that rear section, the rear building, the rear structure, is to maintain it as a garage and add a unit above there. Currently, the property has 2 units, both in the front building, and the size of the property allows for 3 units total. And so we're going to add a 3rd unit as a studio apartment where the hayloft is over the garage. Let's see. I don't think I need to say anything else about the front of the building, right? Do you need to see the floor plans of what we're discussing? Okay. These are details of the different areaways of by the doors, and the wood fence and pavers in the rear yard. We're not calling it a basement, we're just calling it the first floor, even though it's about a foot below grade, just to make things simple. So the lower level, the first floor, will have 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. The existing, and like I said, the garage will be kept as a garage. The existing building coverage, because there's 2 buildings on the site, is already 60%, 65% of the lot. So we're already above that number. So what we're proposing is not necessarily, I would consider, a full height extension, but rather would be to remove the last 4 feet of the rear yard addition. It's 16 feet long. We take off the last 4 feet and cantilever on the 2nd floor and the 3rd floor an additional 7.5 feet to make for a bedroom you can actually put your furniture in. The current bedrooms are like 9 by 7, very small rooms. And that would give you a unit on the 1st floor and the 2nd floor that has 3 bedrooms and an office, you could say, or 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. The unit on the floor above, the 3rd floor, we do the same thing, as I said, take off the rear 4 feet, extend that back 7.5 feet, and you'd have a 2-bedroom, 1-bath unit on the 3rd floor. Let's see, did I pass by the studio layout? I did. Since the hayloft doesn't have a stair to it, there's basically a little hole that barely one person could fit through, and right now just an aluminum ladder. We're going to be reframing that 2nd floor using the existing beams, flatten them out, and make it into a studio level with a stair running down the side down to the alley. There'll be a bathroom, kitchen, a nice 300, I don't have it in front of me, square foot space that we would need to reconfigure the existing openings on the north side of that as windows. Right now there's kind of a window. It doesn't look like it's original. And then put a new window in on the south side facing onto the alleyway. Given what we said about the once and future approval for 8486 Cole Street, this is the one part of the building that's actually going to remain visible from the public right of way, even once that other building is built. Here we go. So on this sheet is A201, which is the typical building sections. It's cut through looking towards the west. 5th Street is on your right, the alley is on your left. And you can see in the darker shaded parts of that are the parts that we plan to reframe and rebuild for this extension, this cantilever, for the extension of the rear yard addition. The next sheet kind of shows the same thing in the other direction. Both these sections are taken looking north. The one on the top is through the existing section. As you can see, we're not expanding it. The one on the bottom is through the southern part of this expansion, where we're actually making it 2 feet wider as well. These are just the wall sections of what we're planning to do. This one on the left simply shows that we're keeping the existing structure for the second floor framing and the roof, the second floor framing and the roof framing. Take that back. That's the third floor framing and the roof framing. And we're reframing the second floor framing over the first floor in order to create this cantilever. The next sheet shows all the windows. We're mostly using a 2/2. A number of the buildings on the block have had the windows replaced with 2/2s. And we're also working on 88 Coles, which is the building on the corner right next to this, AKA 301 5th Street. The 1938 photograph from that project, or that building, shows 2/2 windows from 1938 on that one as opposed to 1/1s. So we're proposing 2/2s on the parts of the buildings, both buildings that were visible from the public rights of way, and 1/1s in the back. The addition would be getting clad windows, and the window in the rear that faces onto the alley would also be a double hung, larger size 2/2 Marvin as well. Many of the buildings around this have had their front doors replaced. So this type A door, it says existing stoop entrance door. As I said, the frame of it and the transom are going to be retained and painted, and the new door has the layout that you see there as a 5-panel door, which is again consistent with all the doors you see on the other buildings around it. Let's see. So in terms of the elevations, on the street, you have the stone face that we plan to remove. We have not yet done a probe to see what the condition of the brick is behind there, but many of the other buildings on that street have had their brick face or stone face removed, and you have common brick behind there in most of those cases. We're proposing to do the same thing next door on 88 as well. And we haven't done, we've done a walkthrough with Mr. Reedon on what that one looks like, and we're going to have problems in that building. While it's going to be a certificate of no effect, has a lot more work that's required for it. You probably have seen, you know exactly the building we're talking
Yes,
about.
we do.
It's got mold growing up all one side of it. It's in really horrible shape, inside and out. This building at least was being lived in up until last year, even though it's not in particularly beautiful shape on the inside as well. Yeah, so our proposal is to expose the brick if we can, do the 2/2 windows. The existing railings are not original, but we're going to keep those. We'll do whatever repair work is required for the stoop. And it's one of the few stoops along there that has the original railings, and they look pretty good. So we're going to paint those. In the rear, we'll call the rear yard elevation, the rear of the original brick building has stucco on it, parging. We're going to keep that. There's existing windows that we're going to replace with the 1/1 wood windows. This portion of the rear yard is the part that we're removing as part of the 4 feet that we're taking off the back. And we're going to be putting new siding on the back of that addition.
Can you describe that siding on the back of the addition?
Sure. If you don't mind me jumping ahead a little bit. So the idea, a couple years ago, the south and east sides of the carriage house or the stable in the back had siding replaced with 6-inch reveal James Hardy cobblestone smooth finish Hardy plank. So our proposal is to take there's a stucco on the north side of that rear structure. So we're planning to take the stucco off of there, continuing the Hardy plank around the side. And then on the original 12-foot sections that are to remain on either side of the existing rear yard addition, we're going to take the gray plastic, vinyl siding off, and also put the same Hardy plank on the side of that. The part that's the addition, the part that's new, the expansion that we're proposing, we'd be doing in Hardy panel, same material, but 4x8 sheets with battens every 16 inches on center. And I have all those samples if this is a good time to pass those out. Cobblestone is very similar to, I believe it's a Revere pewter, the HC 172 Revere pewter. So our plans are to repaint all of the stucco in that same color, unless we think it should be a different color. But then, as much as possible, reuse use that Hardy plank to sort of tie all of it together. So that way, the section that's new, the part that we're proposing, that's a whole new section, is distinguished with a different color and a different orientation of the material, so that you can tell that's the new section and the rest of it's the historic section. And it's there's a little color elevation on that board as it gets passed around.
It's interesting that we went a different direction.
Right, so again, the idea is that you can tell, oh, that's the part that we added. That's not, and that's not original. The window sizes are all different. Every single window on this building is a different size, even more so on 88 next door. But we're going to be as far, with the exception of the this addition that we're proposing and the rear wall facing the alleyway of the carriage house is what the people who sold this this project are named Cotrillo, which might be Cotrillo might be a name people have heard before. Apparently, they've owned that building since about 1952 or something like that, and they gave us a story about absolutely everything.
Yeah.
Which I have, yes, been told to take with a grain of salt.
Yes.
So let me just call attention to that alley elevation. So we're, and if you'd like to see, I have lots of photographs of just the poor condition, and maybe you've seen it and walked by it yourself. So the existing garage doors are in very poor shape. So we're planning to replace them, but we're going to replace them with an overhead door that has the same sort of beadboard pattern on the outside of it. Right now, there are 4 individual panels, and the drawing doesn't really show it, but there are 4 individual panels that sort of bifold. I don't know if they bifold, but they are supposed to bifold. I guess they bifold enough because there used to be a 32 Plymouth parked in the rear yard and a 69 Camaro parked in the garage that hadn't been moved in several decades. And they got them out of there. So the door opened enough to get them out.
Would you mind showing us the photos of
Sure.
the current condition?
Sure. I'll start on the inside first. Is that okay? Or you want to see the outside?
The exterior.
The exterior?
What, you were just talking about the outside doors, and
Okay.
that's what you meant by the beadboard. I was curious.
Yes, and I have even more pictures on the inside showing just the rotted pieces. unfortunately, they're in very poor condition. But it's our plan to replace them with 4 new panels, or visually 4 new panels, one of which being the door to the stair that leads to the new apartment upstairs. And then the overhead door will have a dividing element in it so that it looks like there's 3 more doors on that side as well. So with the exception of having this piece of trim in between the 2 doors, this will essentially look like the same 4 doors that we're replacing. And then originally, according to the 1938 photograph, upstairs was just a little hole for loading the hay in. So we're proposing a nice big window because this faces south, and this would be nice for the studio apartment to have a decent sized window in it. Let's see. And I think I probably have left some stuff out, but that comes to the end of the drawings. Like I said, I have lots of photographs if you want to see the, any other reasons why we're proposing to do what we're doing.
Well, the only thing I was going to ask is, do you have photos from Cole Street that shows the view through the vacant lots?
Yes, I have photos and I have computer renderings.
That would be great.
Do you want to see the computer renderings? Both?
Why not both?
Okay.
Can we mark the renderings before you show them, just as A1?
Maggie, I have a question.
Yeah.
Did we not approve a plan for that vacant lot on Cole Street?
We did. I will discuss it during staff comments. We can discuss it more in depth, but that approval has long expired.
Okay.
And I believe you told me that they had never actually memorialized it
No,
either.
they had not.
In my understanding, the GC that we're talking to about doing the work on both this project and 88 is the guy who is Dave Slurs, who's
Oh, okay.
was one of the 2 owners of that. I don't know if he's an owner, but
No,
he's
he
one
owned
of
it.
the 2 people,
Yep.
applicants for that property.
Yeah.
And I made to understand from Dave that the other, like, the money people behind that project are looking to sell it because they're retiring and moving to Florida. So it's on the market if anybody wants to buy it. And just so you know, I have 7 of these, or 6 of these images.
Okay.
So this is a computer modeling looking at the what would be visible from Cole Street. On one side, of course, is the stucco. That's on the side of the original building. This is the cobblestone hardy plank that we're proposing for the extant section of the addition. And this little strip of gray there is what you see from directly across Cole Street. You say, well, what if you do a more oblique view? Okay. Oh, sorry. Before we get to the oblique view, so this is
The project.
this is a computer rendering that includes what was approved for 84, 86. It's 44 feet tall. It's literally 50% taller than all the buildings around it. And even if someone just did a 3-story building or even a 2-story building, it would still be screening the side of 299 from Cole Street. So you wouldn't see it. Go to, if you go down Cole Street a little bit to the south, you don't see any of the work that we're proposing. If you go the other way, you're standing across from 88 Coles, you see a bit of the gray of the timber bark color that we're proposing for the extension, for the proposed, the new section. And if you go right to the corner, then that's what you see is the hardy panels with the battens on the side of it in that extension. So those are the shots from Cole Street. I also have, which I guess this would be the next. Sorry, the connecting to this has made everything on my screen smaller. So even though I have my reading glasses on, oh, okay. So this is a computer model showing this gray box here is the extension that we're proposing. And you can see it in relationship to the other rear yard extensions. With the exception of the one that's just been completed, this darker gray at the left here at 289, which I believe was approved in 2022. It's recently completed. It's full height, full width. The other ones are not, and we're not proposing to do a full height or full width, at least. See this red line down here is the rear yard, the 30-foot rear yard step back from the alleyway, and we're at about 32 or 33 feet from there. This one, by the way, what I have my cursor on, that rear yard addition shows up in the 1885 Sanborn map. So that actually might be the first precedent for this particular block. And that's this part right in the middle here. This is the part that was approved a couple of years ago and just recently approved. Jeff Jordan was the architect on that. This is us with a little bit of addition that we'd like to have on the back. And is that sufficient, or what else would you like to see? No.
Well, are there any questions for Mr. Mahaffey that would lead to bopping around
Has
the
the board
plans?
gone all the way around? Okay.
And I don't know if you didn't show the photos, but the only thing I wanted to add was I live nearby and I know this view, and the existing vinyl siding is very dilapidated, and in poor condition. So this, whether or not we're going to consider whatever with the vacant lots there, approvals or not, this is going to improve that by the removal of the vinyl siding and the new hardy plank. So I think that's something to take into consideration as well.
Also, you saw in my images that there's some improvements we're planning to make to corner building to 88 Coles 301.
Oh, and
those have not been approved yet, but
on the material sample board, the bricks are shown like very dark. That's not. Yeah, they're good.
my apologies.
Yeah.
There's only a certain number of
Flip it around, Tom.
brick. When I tried to take a brick color and put it on there, it just made it red. So the other buildings around there have common brick. Apparently, they were originally painted. So as you know, common brick is the whole mixture of sort of browns and blacks and reds and oranges, and it's a whole mix of colors, which doesn't exist in Vectorworks' RenderWorks library, that particular.
Okay. And yeah, I just want to be sure you're not proposing to paint it like a dark color or anything on the front.
Unless,
The stucco off and it
Unless
turns
the-
it's in bad shape or something, and then
right, unless we
Maggie,
can't
over.
remove, I know that was one of the things in the staff report that Ms. O'Neill flagged, that if we have some issue with removing that stonework, the question then is, do we just leave it? Do we paint it? Do we just leave it? Is it artistic enough in itself? It's like 1950s, 1960s gray. It's not beautiful.
Yeah.
So, well, that's the question. So there's no, so it might remain to be seen. If we do paint it, or I don't know if it should be painted just because it's stone and not brick. If it was a brick face, like some of the others on there, of course, yeah, maybe you'd want to paint it a red color. My understanding that 289 used a particular HC color, cherry something. Or,
Yes, they already had an existing brick facade that had previously been painted, so they removed the many layers of paint and then repainted it in order to keep the brick intact.
okay.
Sense to paint that red. No.
Yep, so our thing, I guess, would be to leave the stonework or the stone face in place, unless people think it should be painted. Unless you guys think it should be painted. Unless staff thinks it should be painted.
We can discuss that in
Do you
staff
do you
comments.
have the colored elevations that you are showing on that material board? Do you have that digitally that you can put on screen so that we can all look at it together?
Let me just think where that is.
That comes off easy.
Should be in the same folder here. Sample board. It's downloading.
This is the same room.
Incredibly slowly. I do have, if you wanted it, I do have the CAD program on here, so I could open it up and do all sorts of more stuff, but I thought that might be a waste of y'all's time tonight, so. I don't have it open at the moment. Yeah,
It's
this
an interesting.
file does not seem to be opening.
All right.
If you want, you want
Yeah, we
the
can pass it around.
sample board?
Thank you.
Oh, you know what I do have? For my own purposes, in case I forgot what was on any of it, so we pass around, but it doesn't have the actual paint samples on it, but it does have essentially the same information.
No, we can pass that down, I guess.
Yeah, so it doesn't have the actual paint samples, but has,
Yeah, we've seen this.
well, that's the same, it's the same as the board, it's just that it's not been spray mounted to a piece of foam core and the samples taped to it.
But the question you've posed is what to do with the facade if you cannot remove the material that's on there now, correct?
Yeah, I thought if that question came up, I wouldn't have an answer.
You're still doing 2/2 windows, you're still doing the appropriate door, and then you have this material on the facade. And
One other thing I forgot to mention, right now, the cornice is covered up with metal panels on it.
Right.
And the Contrillos assured me that the cornice is still there behind the metal panels, because they were the ones who paid to put that up in 1957 or whatever.
So if you're asking for an answer, obviously there's got to be the exploration first to see if that
Yes.
material can be removed and how successfully. And then there's the question, what do you do if it can't be removed? You know, there's been times when stucco was applied to buildings when that's been appropriate. If you were asking me if it should be painted, I wouldn't paint it
Just leave
because
it?
it's of its time. Painting it, I don't see how it's going to do any
Again, because
improvement.
it's stone and not brick.
Exactly, so, but I think we'll have to cross that bridge, and you'll be working with staff when that time comes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, like I said, we have the added benefit of working with two staff members.
yeah.
It's two different projects, two in one.
All right, are there any other questions about the project?
Just to ask about the most salient feature of the addition, I think it's interesting the way you've articulated that floating volume. I guess I'm just curious, why doesn't it come down to the ground? Why is it cantilevered?
Because we're at 65%.
It has to
And,
do with coverage. Got it.
As it turns out, I don't know if this is a recent thing or not, but a cantilever is not counted against either building coverage or lot coverage. So this way, we can expand the building, expand the upper stories, make decent size bedrooms that people can actually put their furniture in, and still have almost the entire rear yard planted.
Keep it permeable.
And that gives us our, I believe it's 79.67, or 80%, our 80% lot coverage.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Should we open a public comment?
I'd like to propose a 5-minute recess.
Oh, sure. Yep, we are at an hour and a half. Okay, so before we open a public comment, we'll take a 5-minute recess. All right, it is 7:58. We'll see everyone at 8:04. Cool. All right.
All right, so we can call the meeting back to order.
Okay. All right, we were on open public comment. If there are any members of the public present who would like to speak regarding this application, approach the public comment mic. Staff sees no members of the public present, recommends a motion to open and close public comment.
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, so we can go into staff comments on this, talk through a couple of things that have come up. So the first is I just want to clarify the proposal on Cole Street for that empty lot. The commission saw an application for new construction at that site in 2019. The HPC actually denied the first application for that in late 2019, and then the applicant reapplied with a new scheme that was shorter by, I believe, a full story, with that third story set back. And that was approved, I think it was the meeting right before COVID, honestly. I think it was February of 2020. The applicant did not ever continue on to the planning board for that application. So that HPC approval expired the following year. At this point, it has been 3 years since that expired, and the applicant would have to, that we would not renew that COA. That is past the point for new construction that we would renew, especially because they did not go to planning board or zoning board and get it approved. So at this point, in staff's mind, there is no approval at that lot. That being said, there are like maybe 10 empty lots left in the historic district. So something will happen there eventually. For those of you who were on the board at that time, if you do remember, that lot is a very, very non-conforming lot. It's, I think, 50 feet deep. So any application there will be a struggle. So I don't necessarily think anything's going to happen anytime soon. But long term, yeah, something will probably go there. Second item, I think, so the next item down I have is to talk about that brick and stone facade, just kind of jumping around a little bit. So on the staff report, I did include a recommended condition for approval that if the applicant does get approved, and they go to remove the stone face and they can't, they have to put back brick, right? Sometimes you are able to turn the brick around and use the other side. I am seeing less and less applicants successfully be able to do that. I think I can count on by 2 hands the amount of people who have actually been able to turn the brick around. Garden State, historically, unless there is the mesh behind it, is almost impossible to get off of these bricks. And when you have the mesh behind it, that's a whole host of other issues that you then have to deal with. Which is why I recommended that condition, that they replace it with a brick underneath that at least kind of matches. I cannot think of an application where we have let an applicant paint a stone face like this. We have let applicants paint the brick version of the Garden State, mostly because when painted, it can reflect a predominant building material. This type of stone that's on this building does not reflect any kind of predominant material that was used historically in this district, or frankly, any of the downtown districts that I can recall. Nor have we, in my experience at least, approved an addition on a building and allowed the facade to remain unrestored. To some degree. They are proposing some restoration work, including the cornice, the windows, the doors, and things like that. To my knowledge, I can't remember when we have allowed or permitted the applicant to retain the brick face. So with anything on the facade, we would recommend that they do some probes They try to remove it. Hopefully it goes well. I have seen it go well in the past. It is a small number, but maybe this will be one of the unicorns. And if not, it would be to work with staff to determine an appropriate replacement brick, as reflected in the 1948. Okay, that being said, going into the staff report, we are going to staff recommendations and comments. The applicant did a good job of showing this is a relatively standard size addition for this block. It is one of the smaller additions on the block that we have seen. I can't recall the last time we've seen a cantilevered addition like this, but I do think it is an interesting solution to their coverage problem. That being said, it is something that, we don't typically see very often. I can't necessarily fit it neatly in a pattern of development, but the size of the addition is something that is consistent with the block. The only real drawback of this is that it is visible from the public right-of-way, where there's really no getting around it. Again, in staff size, there is no approval at that lot, despite what has been done in the past. So that is something that the commission will have to consider with their review of the application. So if the commission chooses to approve a certificate, we do have recommended conditions. The first, of course, is that condition regarding the brick on the front. And then I also had noted down a condition similar to the last application that a planting plan with planting schedule be included at the time of construction documents. Right. Are there any questions for staff?
I think I have two, Maggie. Given that we can't determine when a building will go up on Cole Street, is there anything else that you would consider mitigating on what they're planning to do, since that will be visible from the public right of way? Do you see anything else that would assist or in?
I mean, it's obliquely visible based on the renderings that they provided, right? When you're standing right in front of it, you do see that historic bulk. That is something that, like the obliqueness of it through an empty, right? It's not like you can see the addition. Like we've approved obliquely visible additions before through lots.
Right.
This one is more visible than some of those. But unless you are looking at it from an angle, right, you can justify it that way, is that it's through an angle and the bulk is similar to others on the block.
My second question is, obviously you can't see the cornice, it's covered with metal, so the applicant would come back to you and show you the condition of cornice before proceeding.
Yeah, that would be something the applicant would clarify before the submission of construction documents.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so it'd be those two items on the facade that they would, and I mean, of course, any other probing or any internal things that they have to do before construction documents for full permitting. Just for the commission's note, so typically before construction documents, the applicant might submit 2 partial permits. I don't know if that's the case for this applicant, but in the past we've seen interior cleanouts with interior non-structural demo and footing and foundations, things like that, before they submit full construction documents reflecting what they approved for at the commission.
So if they take off the metal and the cornice isn't there, then they're back to looking at 38 photographs to determine what the design is. Do they have to come back to us in that case?
They don't have to come back to the commission. So in the case that they take off that metal and there is no cornice there, their construction documents would need to show scaled dimension details of the proposed cornice with materials and profiles and things like that. And then prior to them, frankly, even, I mean, you can't get shop drawings until you pay the manufacturer anyway, but they would have to submit shop drawings that matched the approved details on the plans.
Okay, thank you.
All right, are there any other questions, concerns? Yeah, go for it, Scott.
This is the only building of those 9 on that block that the cornice is covered up. So we have plenty of evidence of
Oh, that's
exactly
right.
what's supposed to go there.
That's right.
If when we take it down, it's not behind there.
Perfect.
So we know exactly what to do. Well,
From what I recall,
we
it's
know
a,
exactly what to do. I'm going to hand it to you. Yes.
yeah, and from what I recall, it's a relatively simple cornice too. We were not looking at any,
Brackets at every 2 feet. they have a specific profile. In fact, if I may show off just for a second.
Sure.
That profile is different on those 9 units than it is on the 11 across the street.
Mm-hmm.
And the 11 across the street, actually 88 Coles and the other ones down Cole Street had that same one from the north side of Fifth Street.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a slightly simpler pattern than the ones next door and across the, anyway. So,
Gotcha.
yeah, we would replace the brackets if that's what was necessary.
Great. Okay, are there any other questions? Questions about conditions, anything you'd like to see? I assume at this point the commission's leaning towards approval. So any conditions you'd like to see reflected in the COA that we have not written down? Hearing none? Okay.
And the applicant is.
Well,
Oh, okay.
so again, the recommendation is to approve the COA with the conditions in the staff report and read into the record. We have that planting plan one read into the record. I know that is different than what you guys had said, right? The recommendation is to, if you cannot remove if the brick underneath is damaged, to replace the brick.
With like a thin brick or something that matches.
Historically,
A full thick brick would not,
we've done a full brick.
okay. But that would that would leave you with like an 8-inch depth from the face of the brick back to.
No,
the
you would
window.
remove the damaged brick
Oh, okay, so.
and replace it.
Okay, so if there's only I think there's only 2 withes of brick.
Mm-hmm.
So we basically wouldn't have very much left if we took off the one withe.
Well-
You only have like 4 inches of
Yes.
brick and expect it to stand by itself.
Well, no, you don't expect it to stand by itself. There would be a good amount of structural scaffolding involved in order, right? And this, for what it's worth, this is why I very specifically note this in the staff report, because I want to make it clear that the removal of Garden State is an undertaking.
Yes.
It is, I hate this material so much, and everyone loved it in 1955. It's not easy. And I really do hope that this stuff just peels off wonderfully for you. That is obviously the ideal scenario because, if we can reuse the original material, we would like to reuse the original material. But I do want to make it clear that the expectation of the commission is that if you cannot remove that without damaging the brick, then we'll have to remove the brick that has been damaged and replace it so that we are following the historic site evidence. Okay? Good?
Yes,
We accept conditions?
client says yes.
Okay. Tom?
Yes, we've reviewed your report and we accept the conditions there, as well as the added ones on the record.
Great. All right. That being said, anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion with the conditions as set forth by staff.
Second.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Blazak?
Aye.
Commissioner Amatuzo?
Aye.
Commissioner Garriga?
Aye.
Commissioner Sandkamp?
Aye.
Commissioner Gunther?
Aye.
Commissioner Sakong?
Aye.
Commissioner Cronin is absent. Vice Chair Gucciardo?
Aye, and I'd like to say I appreciate the subtleties in the color palette that you've chosen for the project. It's one of the more sensitive ones that we've seen. Yeah.
And Chairman Gordon?
Aye.
Okay, there are 8 votes in favor, none against, no abstentions. The COA with conditions is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We are on to our next item, which was actually our first item.
So, moving to old business, we have review and recommendation of proposed amendments to Chapter 345, Article 3, Subsection 30 of the city's land development ordinance entitled Local Landmark Designation Standards. This is a recommendation to the Jersey City Planning Board and Jersey City Council, and this was carried from the last regular HPC meeting.
Okay. Can we hear me? I mean, that's not usually an issue anyway, but all right. So we have some local landmark designation standards for everyone to review. This is following in the recommendations from the master plan to start working on some elements of our ordinance that are a little lackluster. Because remember, we updated some demo ordinance language a couple meetings ago. And now we are on to the local landmark designation standards. For full disclosure, this language change is bumped up on the list in terms of priority because we need to change this language in order to qualify for certified local government status, which is something that we are actively in the process of doing. So this needs to change, and then we will have a free and clear application to the state for that. So we are going to take you through most of this language. This is almost entirely from scratch new. There is, so you'll see there's a remove text and strike through, new text underlined. Almost everything in here is underlined because prior to this set of language, our only landmark language was that sentence at F at the top of the page. Wow. It quite literally just said, if we want to landmark something, make an application. It had no standards, it had no qualification, it had nothing. Apparently the story goes that they had designation language and someone forgot to copy and paste it into the final doc. This was 2001. Apparently no one knew how to work Microsoft Word. Anyway, so we have entirely new language here. We have taken this language from a couple different municipalities throughout the state. Some are very similar to Jersey City, some are very different, but we took basically different pieces of sections of ordinances that we like. We assembled this all together. We sent it off to SHPO to make sure it met the qualifications required to be a certified local government. They signed off on it. Jonathan and his team at legal reviewed it. They signed off on it, and we have this language here in front of you. So I'm just going to very quickly take you all through it. So again, the only remaining section is this first top sentence. It starts off with the proposals to designate a property as a landmark or district, and then it has to be submitted to city planning because, of course, we're part of city planning. It's a zoning change essentially to landmark something, so we have to have an application that goes to HPC, to planning board, and it goes to city council. For individual landmarks, you need to submit clear exterior photographs showing the entirety of the property, historic photographs if available, location map on showing the municipal tax map, physical description, statement of significance, and those are expanded on what's in that later on. For districts, you need a building by building inventory, clear photographs of each property, historic documentation, the municipal tax map showing the boundaries and parcels included in the district, physical description of the proposed district and boundaries, and also a statement of significance for that. We also have standards for multiple property designations, which essentially we determine if it should be filed as a multiple property designation, individuals, or a district, and then we dictate which way that should go. Next section discusses procedures for designation. So you start by having an interested party, submitting the application to the HPC. The commission can also initiate their own application, so it doesn't necessarily have to come from an individual. It can also come from the commission saying, we would like staff to explore designating this. Once we get a complete application, complete as determined by the standards in the ordinance and by staff, we'll schedule the hearing for the HPC. So here is where we get into a little bit different from a normal HPC application. So you do have to provide notice to the owners for designation of individual landmark or district. It has to be 10 days prior to the scheduled hearing. It has to go to the property owner through certified mail. And there's a whole host of things that the notice needs to have. You also need to do a public notice in the newspaper of record at least 10 days prior to the scheduled hearing. These standards actually follow the planning board and zoning board standard notice standards. So it's consistent throughout HPC, planning board, and zoning board. All right. And that we also state that you have to notice for both HPC and for planning board. So there will be 2 notices provided to any property owner being designated. All right. Upon review, hearing comments from the public, if any, proposed nomination shall be voted on by the HPC, and then it forwards to planning board for consideration. Planning board then reviews it, and if planning board agrees with HPC's recommendation, it goes to city council. And then you have to notice again for city council, right? So there are 3 public notices in addition to any community meetings or anything that's happening. So for criteria for designation, we are following the Department of the Interior's criteria for designation. So we have our standard 4 here, right? We have associated with broad patterns of history, a significant, so event, person, architectural style, or archaeological information. And then there's also criteria for specific sites, so cemeteries, birthplaces, graves, things like that. This is a copy and paste language from the National Park Service. This is not language that came from anywhere other than the National Park Service. And then we also have designation of a landmark or district within the boundaries of Jersey City by City Council that represents. So we have some standards here as well. And that is it. Is there, I know I went through that very quickly. Is there any part anyone wants to go back to? It's a lot of words.
Just one question. You had mentioned that one of us could actually put up for a landmark designation.
Yes, so an application for designation can originate with the commission, right? The commission can ask staff to explore something, explore designation of a site. That means, so if it originates with the commission, you guys are the ones putting together all of those materials.
Understood. That was going to be my follow-up question.
Yeah, right. So those materials don't come out of nowhere, right? And that this is one of those things that is frequently talked about with designation is there is a barrier of entry, right? You have to have all of these documents ready, and that's one of the things that we're hoping CLG status will help us with. You get access to, there's a match, but it's a very small match percentage, more grant money for these things. Funding for anything historic preservation is always difficult. So having a yearly source of money that we know exists, that we know we have a relatively decent chance of getting, there's only, I think, 75 CLGs in the state. So it's a pretty small group of people we're competing against for that money. It gives us the ability to help with this more than we have been able to in the past.
So if we put that together, like let's just say Stephen were to, nominate something, does he have to recuse himself from voting? Okay.
Yeah. Right. So if Stephen put together the documents, yes.
Okay.
But if, let's say we pass this, we get CLG status, and there's a conversation on the commission that says, oh, this is mentioned in the master plan as something that we should designate, staff should look into that, and then we choose to apply for a CLG grant to hire to do that. We could do that. Typically, that has not been how the commission has pursued designations in the past. It always comes from an individual or a group. But having funding to be able to do that stuff opens us up. Now, if you yourself were to prepare a designation, that would conflict you out, regardless of if it originated on the commission. You're a member of the commission, but because you have prepared the documents saying, I think this is significant, you can't sit on the commission and evaluate if it's significant.
Right. Makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a little hinky there, but that's essentially how we would navigate it.
Will this new document have any bearing on what we are in the middle of for Sherman Place?
No, because you guys are already following the standards in this document.
Okay.
Yeah, so the standards in this document also match the process for designation on the state and national level as well. So we're not asking for any more or less information than any entity would have to provide for any other level of designation, barring, of course, like National Historic Landmark or anything like that.
Great.
Maggie, I have a question. In that first paragraph, where you strike the word sites, so it's no longer nominating sites, landmarks, and districts. It's now just nominating landmarks and districts.
Yep.
Out of curiosity, why is the word sites stricken?
Because we define the word landmark, and sites is not defined, right? So you're nominating a landmark or a district, right? sites is a very broad term. Landmark is both defined in our zoning ordinance and in the MLUL.
Got it.
I actually
And does that definition, and maybe shame on me for not knowing the answer to this, is that definition broad enough to include not just buildings but also open spaces, rights of ways?
Yes, the
infrastructure.
the distinction between a landmark and a district is a landmark is the individual entity, be it a building, structure, landscape, etc. District is a collection of those. And of course, the distinction between an individual and a district is when you're nominating a district, it's all going to be under one theme, right? So
Right.
let's say you have multiple concurrent battlefields in a row and you want to make a battlefield district, right? You can do it under the thread as a district. They were all next to each other of a battlefield, whereas a landmark is going to be something that is individually significant. Which is also actually, to tie this back to something we did recently, you have Hamilton Park on its own being significant under Criterion A and Criterion C, but we individually landmarked the Venus Pelagati House for association with Criterion B, right? So that's actually a very apt distinction between a landmark and a district. Okay. Are there any other questions on this? Okay, hearing none, should we open for public comment? Okay, are there any members of the public in attendance? Okay. Come on up. I think you have to flip on the mic, though. There's like a, yeah, actually, you can just use this one.
Yes. Shireen McCormack. It's SHIRIN MACCORMACK. 130 Glenwood Ave.
Sharon, before you start, I know you've presented in front of the HPC before, but for the record, I do want to clarify. You have 3 minutes to address the HPC. I will set a timer. I'll let you know when you have 1 minute left. And if you have any questions, you ask through the chair and we'll respond. Okay?
Thank you, Maggie.
You're good to go.
Good evening. I'm the president of McKinley Square Community Board. I'm a trustee, new trustee at Landmarks Conservancy and Woman of Action in JC in 2024. The last time I was here, I was advocating for Jersey City to gain CLG status. I appreciate the newly outlined clarity in the nomination process and that the city's requirements will now align with the states and the countries. However, these will be quite daunting and demanding for the average person, requiring the resident to do an exorbitant amount of work to research, fund, and survey. My guess is that the average resident would not be able to easily or quickly complete these requirements. Many, like me previously, would not even know where to begin. My neighbors and I, through our community group, have been working towards designation of Mayhew Terrace from 120 to 130 Glenwood with the close help of JC Landmarks Conservancy for the last 1.5 years now. We see no end in sight. The 1895 Queen Anne homes are the first and last of their kind north of Montgomery, a block from the HD. They're in an area where letters of significance exist for the block's former garden apartments and dorms from the 1950s, but no study or letter yet exists for Mayhew Terrace. I have supplied many documents to the HPO and learned just today that the funds are not there and that these are not considered to have urgency despite having architectural and cultural significance. My community group wouldn't exist if we thought so. We formed after 104's demo was applied for in 22 and later approved in 2023. We seek to protect these assets, marking up the current tax map, including current and 1938 photos of properties and some info for nomination seems very reasonable. However, the part that's rigorous is the building by building, and I'm quoting, inventory of all properties within the district identifying contributing, non-contributing, or intrusions. I strongly suggest that this one be assisted by the HP office. or their consultants at Hunter Research or SHPO in some way with community outreach to alleviate some of the wheels spinning with a lot of time involved and the need to create to manage the need for accurate professional knowledge. The average person is not educated on what is considered contributing or non-contributing, or what constitutes an intrusion, or the fact that if it can be undone, it affects the assessment. They're not aware of the industry lingo. A preservation enthusiast maybe can't tell you what style or period a structure belongs to, or the difference between a baluster and a spindle.
1 minute.
I was even in a planning board meeting when the architectural so-called expert repeatedly referred to a turret as the cone-like structure. He should have known. But everyone, my point is that everyone is able to tell you why a building should be nominated and how a building made them feel, or how upset they'd be if that building suddenly disappeared. So please provide opportunities for the HPO to engage with community for nomination requirements, and do not leave it all in the nominator to figure out and provide upfront. Nomination has to be realistic and doable. Andrea Tingley of SHPO runs seminars to help people fill out the forms at the state level, and the Jersey City HPO should hopefully consider engaging her for the HPO's goal of outreach to educate the public. We want to work with all of you.
Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we want to close public comment as no other members of the public are here?
I'll make a motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There weren't any specific questions for staff in there. I will just kind of go through a couple of things. Again, we're hoping that, again, I understand, as I said before, there is a barrier to entry with designation. It is important for us to have very specific standards that outline why a building is significant, right? Part of the reason sometimes that we struggle with applications in our current historic districts is because in the 70s and early 80s, when they were designating a lot of these districts, they didn't have enough information in these applications because there wasn't the professional expertise there. And it's something that we see now that restricts some of our ability to make informed decisions on applications. So I understand that there's a lot of information being asked of applicants, but there is a reason that we're doing it. And it's so that future generations can make informed decisions on applications. That being said, like I said earlier, I'm hoping that the CLG funding will alleviate some of these things, and we can help engage community groups and say, okay, well, we can apply for a grant if we get it. You guys can be the main point person, and the city will essentially, like the community group could potentially provide the match. I don't know how any of that would work, right? But again, the main reason driving this is that we're trying to open additional opportunities through that CLG funding that we hope would, again, make it a little bit more accessible, at least that way.
So historically, these applications have been initiated in a grassroots effort.
Every single application that I've seen in any municipality I've worked in has been at the request of the community, funded by the community, completed by the community.
And you're saying that with these grants potentially available, we'll be able to connect these groups with potential funding.
Yes.
And ease that burden.
Yeah, so there's one existing grant fund that will fund work like this if you are a nonprofit, which a lot of local community groups have nonprofit status. It's through the DCA, through the New Jersey Historic Trust. It is not available every single year, but that funding does exist, and some groups have taken advantage of it in the past. I believe the West Bergen district, that was how they funded that community group. When they prepared those documents to get the West Bergen district designated, they did it through a New Jersey Historic Trust grant. So again, that's how they've been completed in the past. The last individual landmark we saw, the Venus Belgatti House, that was prepared entirely by an advocacy group who was working on a documentary based on her life, and they compiled enough information to prepare a nomination. So it's always been done, and it actually allows staff to have some level of separation to be objective about these things, right? Like that is part of our role as staff, is to evaluate if it has significance, right? So we do need some level of objectivity, right? We can't prepare these designations in-house.
Could we, however, if, say, there were an organization that didn't necessarily have the wherewithal to bring one of those full applications forward, could they attend one of our meetings, speak during the open public comment segment, introduce the idea, and then the commission could, or, the language refers to the may originate at the HPC, as we
Yeah.
were just discussing. So could we then send it to perhaps Hunter or some other group to?
So we don't have Hunter. I know that was mentioned. We don't have Hunter Research contracted. We have them on a very, very, very limited contract to review demolitions. If we wanted to have an outside group similar to Hunter, so an outside consultant review something on our behalf, it would have to be a separate contract with them. But that is something that the HPC could request staff to look into and see if funding is available for.
Yeah, I was going to say subject to funding, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah. And the city I don't know who reads the city's budget. City does have a consulting line item for the planning department every year. It is almost always eaten up by us getting an outside engineer to review planning board projects, but on occasion, and also, the engineer and also, people reviewing our demos for us is not cheap. But sometimes there's money left over.
Quick question. So, as as Sharon had just mentioned before, that someone at the state level does preparation seminars.
So one of the things that this is the State Historic Preservation Office. They offer a number of different seminars on a rolling basis for a variety of different things. Sometimes they give them at conferences. Sometimes they host them through the Rutgers March program. Sometimes they just host them through SHPO, either virtually or there's a training facility in Glassboro. And those you sign up for on anyone can sign up for them.
So I guess what I'm asking is there a way that we could collaborate with that department and get one for maybe the general public, once a year at least?
We could ask if there was enough interest in it. We could ask.
Sure. And just out of curiosity, do you know the amount of funding that went into the Venus Pelagati project?
No, that was all privately. And again, their landmarking process was essentially like a side project.
I understand.
For the larger, yeah. Janelle, I almost said side quest because it was. But that was a part of a larger project. So I don't know what their amount was. I do know that West Bergen was in the ballpark of, I think it was $65,000, because it's an unbelievably large district. A smaller district is somewhere, depending on the size of the district, I would say you're not going to find anything cheaper than $5,000, and say 15 is probably a middle ground. Something like what Sharon's describing, where it's a row of 6 houses, would be much on the lower end of that threshold, if not cheaper than that 5,000.
And a specific question, if I may, about the project that Sharon is bringing up. She mentioned the need for contributing and non-contributing buildings. That would be for a district, not for a row of houses, correct?
It would choose to be how you would designate that district.
Right.
If you would
It
do
could
4
have been-
individual designations, or if you would pursue a district. We typically recommend that districts have at least 85% contributing versus non-contributing rates. But we would have to evaluate it.
Right.
They've been providing a ton of information to our office. We have looked at it. I can't tell you if I think it would be better to pursue as a district or as individuals.
And wasn't there a third option where there's a group
Multiple
of
property
buildings, multiple
designation, yes. You
properties?
could do multiple
There
property
are 4 here, right,
Yeah,
involved?
you could do a multiple property
Right.
designation for these.
Which would
that-
possibly eliminate some of the bulk of the work that would be involved in
the district
establishing a
versus
district.
individual, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, sort of like the warehouses of what used to be the
Correct.
former arts district,
Yes.
or warehouse district.
Yeah, where you reduce some of the work with a multiple property designation versus a district is your statement of significance for a multiple property designation is going to apply to all of the properties.
right,
And you're going to have individual property descriptions.
right.
You might have a small addendum for each property for significance based on, who lived there, things like that. But an multi-property designation looks similar to a district.
Seems like that would be a lesser undertaking than establishing a district, yeah.
Yeah. And New Jersey has a history of doing multiple property designations. They're more commonly associated with statewide projects like the Women's History Trail and the New Jersey African American Heritage Trail. Those are all multiple property designations.
Gotcha.
The good thing about those is you can also add to them over time. Okay. Are there any other questions for staff? Any comments on this? If not, the recommendation here is to recommend to the planning board to approve, make a recommendation to the what? Yeah. So it would be recommend to the planning board to recommend adoption.
I'll make a motion to recommend to the planning board to make an adoption.
Second.
Okay. Corey. All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Gunther?
Aye.
Commissioner Sakong?
Aye.
Commissioner Blazak?
Aye.
Commissioner Amatuzo?
Aye.
Commissioner Griga?
I just want to, before I give my vote, I just want to say, like, I agree with, what Mrs. McCormick was saying. That's why I did ask if we could at least do once a year, try and collaborate with the residents, with these community groups. I think it's important that all of these community groups get a chance to at least see what that process looks like. Other than that, I will vote yes, but I just want to be on the record about that.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Sandcamp?
I also vote aye, and I also agree with what our speaker was saying. But I also believe that it's one of the biggest reasons why the Landmark Conservancy gains membership, and it is the one big interested party in Jersey City that can identify and get behind a district or an individual landmark.
Yes, and to my knowledge, Landmark Conservancy is also a 501c3, so they would also be eligible for some of those other grants I talked about. Anyway, Commissioner Cronin is absent, Vice Chair Gutierrez,
Aye.
and Chairman Gordon.
Aye.
All right, there are 8 votes in favor, none against, with no abstentions. The recommendation to recommend adoption is approved. All right, let's go through the rest of the agenda. So for tabled cases, I do not have an update on Temple Bethel. However, they are going to meet with me sometime next week with some new structural documents. So hopefully we'll have an update on that soon. 2426 Kennedy, they are being carried, they requested to be carried to September. They are still waiting for a date to meet with the community for the proposal. So we'll see if that ends up on September or not. Demolition review, we've carried this Communipaw application for many meetings. I am, every other week I send an email to them, like begging for someone to get on the phone with me so I can explain what the purpose of that meeting is, rather than them just say, oh, we're going to look at our plan for this site and figure it out. So working on it. There are no resolutions to introduce and discuss, no resolutions to memorialize. We do not need an executive session, so that just leaves us with adjournment.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, it is 8:43. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.